Hey guys, welcome to my kitchen. My name's Susie Duragon. I am a culinary instructor, and today we are going to be making carrot cake. Not just any carrot cake, but a really fast, simple carrot cake. It's not low fat, it's not gluten-free, it's not refined sugar-free, it's not vegan, it's just regular carrot cake. But it's not so much about the carrot cake today as it is about the little tricks you're going to learn along the way to make it really, really easy to get this cake into the oven in about 6 or 7 minutes. Actually, I think it's even less than that, but that's what I call it. So let's start with the ingredients. We're going to use, obviously, carrots. The dry ingredients are flour, baking powder, baking soda, cinnamon, salt, and the secret ingredient that makes it a little bit more moist, which most people know about, is pineapple. And then you have some eggs and some oil and some sugar. So really, really simple stuff. So let's start off by prepping a pan. You need to use a pan that's 9 by 13 inches because we're gonna make this, there's a little secret when we're done in terms of serving it and in terms of freezing it, which you'll learn in the second part when we talk about icing. So that's why we're gonna cook it in a 9 by 13 inch pan. This pan was my grandmother's, who would probably be about 102 if she was still alive. She was awesome. But I love it because it's just what I make carrot cake in all the time. So that's the first trick, is to don't really veer from what you know. So if there's a cake that you make all the time and you make it in a certain pan and you put it at a certain temperature and that's how it works, then just keep doing that. You can experiment, of course, but a lot of being really good in the kitchen is about being comfortable. And of course, once you get comfortable and you start to get a little bit curious, then of course, make them into muffins, put them into a loaf pan, maybe try it into a bundt pan. But if this is what works, then just keep doing it. So I used to make this cake plus butter tarts for a golf course years ago. And this is the pan that I used to make it in all the time. And because I made it so often and for so long, I didn't want to sort of mess with it. So anyways, long story short, but that's why I use this pan all the time. So we're going to use, you can spray it, but today we're going to use parchment paper, and I'm just going to show you a little trick. So obviously the paper kind of fits into the pan like this. You can see it kind of fits. And what you're going to do is you're going to fold it and then fold it, and this is the edge. So what you're going to do is, just like when you're cutting a circle to put into a cake pan, you're going to just sort of make a little flap. So when you open it up, you have these flaps at the end, and what it does is it just fits really nicely into the pan, and it doesn't kind of flip out the way it usually does when you're trying to stick it all in. So now your pan's ready. What you're going to do now is, first things first, dry ingredients, so 2 cups of flour, and then you're going to start with your measurements. So 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Make sure that you try to sort of level it. 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and you're going to use cinnamon, and cinnamon is a bit of a flavor enhancer. So yes, you'll taste it, but it also intensifies the flavors of everything else. So you can use between 1.5 and 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. So that's done. And then we're going to use 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda. So these are all your leaveners. And yes, I'm using a teaspoon, but I've made this so many times I know exactly how much 1/2 teaspoon is. Unless you've done it a lot, don't do that at home. Use a proper measuring tool. And the last one is salt. And again, salt, people tend to sometimes skip it, but salt, again, isn't to make it salty. It's to intensify all the flavors of everything you have that's in there. So you're going to sort of stir that around. Make sure that it's all stirred into the dry ingredients. And the reason that we do this is because you don't want to, we could throw it into the wet ingredients one at a time, but the trick with this is you don't want to over stir it because it's going to taste like a hockey puck. So that's the one reason that you stir it ahead of time, so that you don't have to do a lot of stirring into the mixing bowl. But the reason that you want to stir it into the dry ingredients is so that you don't get little tidbits of the baking powder or the baking soda. It's really, really bitter, so you don't want to do that. You want to get as much mixed before it goes together. So that's done. We're going to put that aside. And then what we're going to do is, the fattening part of it and all the yummy stuff is just sugar. And again, all the instructions and the measurements are on the website. And then just some vegetable oil. So instead of butter, we're using some oil. We're going to stir it up. I hope you can hear me. And you're going to mix that up, and in real time, when you're actually doing this, you're going to let that run for quite a long time. quite a long time, a couple of minutes at least. Today I'm not going to let it run that long just because I don't want the video to go on forever, but you're going to incorporate that until it kind of starts to look a little bit creamy. So you're going to do that, and while you're doing that, break your eggs into a separate bowl. People say, why? Why are you going to do that? So the first reason is if you've ever gotten a bad egg, they smell so bad. And now the nice thing is most eggs have the date sort of stamped right on the egg, but if you're lucky enough to live close to a farm, then you might get farm fresh eggs, which are great. But if by chance you've had one in the fridge for too long and you have no idea, then you always want to break it into a separate container in case it goes straight into your batter and then pretty much everything's garbage. So I've already put 3 in here. It asks for 4 eggs, so here's the 4th egg. The other reason, and I've actually seen this when I'm teaching, is you try to sort of get it into the mixing bowl and you're sort of going like this, and then the part of the beater hooks onto the side of the egg, and all of a sudden you've lost your eggshell in there, and trust me, you're never going to get the eggshells out of there, so better to do this instead of that. So here's the eggs. Now that's been beating for a minute, so we're going to beat the eggs in. The eggs are going to keep beating, and while they're beating, I'm going to tell you a little bit about I think this is the biggest trick in this cake. So I'm going to shut this off. So because I used to make this in such large quantities, what I used to do, and I kind of had a brain wave one night, I thought instead of grating carrots for every single cake, I would just buy a big bag, and this is actually not even big, but I'd buy a really big bag, and I would literally chop off the ends, scrub them really hard, buy organic if you can, just because you're not going to peel them, and just put them through your food processor until you get a huge bowl like this of grated carrots. And what you're going to do is once they're grated, you're going to put them into little Ziploc bags. And so they're 2-cup measures in the Ziploc bag. Why 2-cup measures? Because almost every carrot cake asks for 2 cups. So what I would do was, if I decided to make a cake right now, these are all the little steps that take less time. So you take this out of the freezer. Sorry, you're going to put them all in bags and put them in the freezer. So they're going to stay there for a couple of months at least. And put in the freezer, decide to make the cake, take it out, put it down on your counter, bang it a little bit. It's still going to be a bit frozen, but that's perfectly fine. By the time you measure all the dry ingredients and you get your eggs whipped, it's all done. So it's actually going to be great. And the nice thing about this is that you can use it in other things. I actually even do this with zucchini for a zucchini cake. But if you're making a meatloaf, if you've got kids that don't eat veggies, throw this into some pasta or your meatloaf. They'll never see it in meatloaf. But the nice thing about carrots versus zucchini, let's say, zucchini's a little bit wet. So carrots sort of retain their strength, if you want to say that, in the freezer. So you could even add some to like a salad. I know that sounds really weird, but they do stay pretty firm, so you can add that. They're so awesome, and it's such a time saver. So that's generally what I do. And then other thing is pineapple. So for the sake of time, you don't want to get a pineapple, cut it, and do all those things. We're not Martha Stewart. So I usually get crushed pineapple because the purpose of the pineapple is to make the cake moist. So you don't necessarily want to see the pineapple, you just want to be able to taste the moistness with the carrots. And trust me, it adds a ton of moisture to the cake. But the nice thing about this is, actually, this is the wrong size can, but if you get the one that's a little bit bigger, it's the recipe calls for a cup of drained pineapple, crushed pineapple. So what you're going to do is you're going to drain the pineapple juice off, add some vodka and have a little drink on the side. And you're not going to use the juice because you need it drained, and you're going to separate it. And usually that can makes for 2 cups, and you only need 1 cup in the recipe. So what I tend to do is I do the 1 cup that I use, and then the 2nd cup I put in a baggie and I put in the freezer. So again, if you have it in the freezer, pull a bag of carrots, pull a bag of pineapple, and then you're ready to go. So those are the tricks that we're going to use. Now, what we're going to do is, this has beaten. I'm going to lower it down a little bit, and I'm going to add the dry ingredients. And the trick with this is like any loaf cake or quick bread, banana bread, any of those, the thing that I find when people ask me questions is mine is so tough and I don't know how you get it so moist. And the real trick is just to not overbeat it. So you want to beat all the leavening, like the eggs and the sugar and the flour. You're trying to incorporate as much air into that as possible. You can't really overbeat that part. But this part, we're just gonna beat it, and you'll see it. You'll see all the flour at the top. I wish I could show you like from up here, but now I'm starting to see the eggs come from underneath. So I'm actually gonna stop it. And I know that sounds really weird, but you can see, if I lift it, you can see that there's still a lot of sort of floury pieces. So don't panic, because the reason that we kind of stopped it there, don't want to overmix it. So we're gonna do the last part of the mixing. Get that back up there, with the carrots and the pineapple. So now you're just gonna open your bag, and if it's frozen, it's probably gonna be a little bit cold, perfectly fine. Open your bag of pineapple, throw this one in, okay, then start it back up again, and quickly until you see that it's sort of incorporated, okay, and then we're gonna take it off. So the nice thing about this is you're going to do the last few turns by hand, which is always the best way to do it, just so that you can see the floury pieces at the bottom. And I find the thing with these KitchenAid mixers, they're so awesome, because I've had mine for 27 years. I'm almost married 27 years, so that's how long I've had it. And other than buying another paddle, it's been amazing. And I bake every day, so every day for 27 years. Don't even want to calculate that. So what you're gonna do, the only bad thing with it is it has these little divots at the bottom. So I just kind of always want to go around the bottom to make sure that there's no little pockets of flour that's being left there. So that's it. Now, I wish I would have had a stopwatch, but I think that's less than 7 minutes if you took all my gabbing out of it. And all you're gonna do is you're gonna throw this in here, and I have to get every last bit. Nothing drives me more crazy than when I watch some of these shows and they have, like, you know, the equivalent of a cupcake left in here. It's terrible. So I like to use absolutely everything. Then we're gonna even it out, and we're gonna put it in the oven, 350 oven, for about 30 to 40 minutes. The other trick that I wanna tell you is, if you have a chance and you haven't done this, to calibrate your oven. And you can call somebody, it's gonna cost you a ton of money, or you can just go to the dollar store and you can buy a little oven thermometer and put it in your oven and turn it to 350 and bake whatever you need to bake, but check the actual oven thermometer, because sometimes people's ovens are off a little bit by 10 degrees. I've seen them off as much as by 50 degrees, which you might need to, you know, fix your oven. But the nice thing about that is, if let's say you're making a cake that you've made your whole life and you pass the recipe along, then it's just kind of a nice thing to tell people that, you know, my oven's a little bit cooler, a little bit hotter, or whatever. So this in my oven is about 30 to 40 minutes, and you'll know when it's ready. You'll see that it's nice and brown. The house smells absolutely glorious. And the trick, people always say, oh, you can just test it. They go like this, you can just test it. But what does that mean? So what you're looking for is right in the center. You sort of push it down with your finger, and it should sort of feel spongy. So obviously, if you think it's ready and it looks kind of ready, and you go like this and it's jiggly, not ready. Put it back in the oven. If you feel like your oven is too hot and the top is getting brown, then just put a piece of foil on top of it and keep it in the oven. If you think that maybe the bottom's getting too dark, which really you wouldn't know that, but I can sort of smell it, then lift it to the next layer up above wherever your kitchen racks are in there. Sorry, the oven racks are. But anyways, practice makes perfect. So you'll make it a couple of times, but honestly, it's the easiest recipe. We're gonna bake this off, and then when it's done, I'm gonna show you how to do the cream cheese icing, and we'll make them like little sandwiches. That's a little sort of trick for you. And we're actually gonna show you how you can portion them out, put the cream cheese icing on top of each piece or in between each piece, and then we're gonna wrap them so that you'll have it whenever somebody says, hey, I'm coming for coffee, and you'll have a beautiful piece of carrot cake to serve them. So that's it, that's the first part. Again, if you want any of the instructions or the measurements for the ingredients, go to www.justcrumbs.ca. And if you have any other questions that I haven't answered, my email is there, so you can just shoot me an email and I will get right back to you. Okay. Okay, have a great day, and I will be right back with the second part of the video. Okay, thanks. See ya.